Man buys a camera with a roll of film from a thrift store, only to embark upon a strange journey later. He found out that the camera was made in 1929. Clearly, the camera was very old. Oers wondered how it found its way to this thrift store. He said, "I found out the camera was built around 1929 and the film was produced between the 40s and the 70s. Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos. That particular day, he was looking for something special for his wife, and he knew that the only store where he could find something extraordinary was a thrift store. He'd made the right decision. Sometimes thrift stores hide a different world. He said, "When I came home and gave the camera to my wife as a gift, she was over the moon. After dinner, I told her I was considering using the camera to take pictures with, since all the mechanics from the camera seemed to be in pristine condition. Furthermore, the camera was a big change for him as it was a different model." He added, "I normally shoot all my photos with high-end gear, so working with an old-school piece of equipment seemed like lots of fun." Just like the camera itself, the film was quite old. Interestingly, it had the word "expose" written on it. What did that mean was something they were about to find out. But the investigation was not going to take them long to know what was there in it. Van Oers shared the information about the roll to the NOS, or Dutch Broadcast Foundation, in 2017. He explained, "I wanted to see if the camera still worked, if everything opened, and if the wheels were still turning. To my great surprise, there was a roll. But what confounded him the most was the word "expose" written on it. What could it mean?" He continued, "I thought that probably meant that the roll had been exposed and used, but the camera seems barely used." It required Van Oers some research work to find out the date of origin. "I found out the camera was built around 1929 and the film was produced between the 1940s and the 1970s. Well, he wanted to develop film out of the roll, which seemed very difficult now. Even though it was a very difficult task, he didn't give up. He asked his pal Johan Hollerman to assist him in this venture. His friend Johan is very well versed in the art of photo developing. However, developing photo out of this roll was going to be tricky for him too. However, his friend was more than ready to take up this challenge. It remained fixed in Van Oers' mind. He had an aim and he had to achieve it no matter what may come. On a Tuesday afternoon, he visited Hollerman's place. Hollerman had finally succeeded in cracking the pictures. A big smile came on the face of Oers when he noticed the outline of the picture that was faint for now as the process of development was still on. As mentioned earlier, developing film is not an easy task, especially if it's about an old film. Van Oers put it, "The work requires knowledge, timing, patience, and accuracy." Even though the process was on, waiting for the whole pictures to surface was really painstaking. They were growing impatient to see the pictures. Van Oers aptly described the process. "That was difficult. I'm extremely impatient. In the end, I even convinced Hollerman to dry the roll with a hairdryer. That's actually very dangerous, but I have those things under the scanner. Fortunately, it had no impact on quality." In a few weeks, some of the images became very clear. Hollerman and Van Oers had finally succeeded in accomplishing their mission. They'd found a piece of history that would have remained in the dark had they not decided to bring it to the light. But what were those pictures about? They finally had those images with them. They'd successfully developed 4 photographs. Hollerman and Van Oers waited for the pictures to dry, and once the images become ready to use, they saw it. No need to say images were black and white. On the image, there was a couple enjoying their holidays. Clearly, the picture was taken many years ago. A new adventure was awaiting Van Oers. The process is the most significant part of the photo developing. That's why they call it magical process, Van Oers said. "We scanned the negatives and found 4 images had enough detail in them to tell that the last time this camera was used, it belonged to a man who's even in one of the pictures, carrying the camera's case, who probably brought his expensive piece of gear on one of his travels. One of those pictures featured a woman standing beside the ocean, and to her left is a bridge and water running under it. And there's also a stone wall along with a boulevard, along with on which several people were walking. Many of them were enjoying the beach and its view." He flipped around another picture that also featured the same woman moving on a steep promenade. In the third picture, the woman is seen on a beach, whereas the fourth one showed a man sitting on a wall. The man was holding a camera case that hung off his shoulder. He told Bored Panda, "We scanned the negatives and found 4 images had enough detail in them to tell that the last time the camera was used, it belonged to a man who's even in one of the pictures carrying the camera's case, who probably brought this expensive piece of gear on one of his travels." The processing of the photos was done. Now the man had taken up a new challenge. We tried to estimate when the picture was taken, but that was a bit of a wet job. Based on the clothing and the scene, it must have been somewhere in the 1940s, 50s, or 60s, said Van Oers. The man had understood by now that the image he had found was special. Though he had the picture, he still had no idea about the owner. It was then he decided to take the help of technology. He shared the pictures with his friends on Facebook. Soon the images got popular among his followers. He said, "It really makes me want to find out who these people in these pictures are. Hopefully one day I'll be able to hand over these negatives to the descendants of this mystery photographer." One of those people who saw the images was Wilco, who gave the photographer some vital information about the image. He was an acquaintance of Oers. His friend told him that the location shown in the image is Biarritz, a city in southwest France. Wilco could not have been wrong in his assumption, as he'd visited the city a number of times. In order to confirm, he even shared a Google Street View image with Van Oers. After seeing the image, the photographer was convinced that these pictures were indeed captured in Biarritz. Oers didn't take long to find out about the technology. The first barrier of the mission is achieved. Surprisingly, it took him only half an hour to figure out the location. Oers said, "We thought it would take a lot of effort to find out the location, but that was done in half an hour." It was nothing short of a treasure hunt for Van Oers. The photographer said, "Looking at the images, I feel I stumbled across a small treasure chest or time capsule, giving us a tiny glimpse into the past. It really makes me want to find out who the people in the pictures are." No need to say that Van Oers was very excited about searching the owner of these photographs, but the doubts were still on. As the pictures were many decades old, what if the owner would have died already? However, he hoped that he'd be able to find the owners. "Hopefully one day I'll be able to hand over these negatives to the descendants of this mystery photographer." It seemed that even destiny wanted him to get to the owners. A few days after sharing the pictures on Facebook, a person named Marion Jurgens reached the photographer. The woman happened to be a relative of the photo's owner. She's the granddaughter of the person in the pictures. She went on to say that these pictures were taken when the man took his better half and daughter on a tour of Biarritz. The man was still not sure whether the woman was speaking the truth or not. He opened up. "After I had developed the photographs, my one wish was to find the descendants of the people in the pictures and send them the negatives and camera. 3 days after the story went viral, I got a message from Jurgens. Jurgens, too, turned out to be Dutch. However, she had relocated to Canada in 2004. The woman came across these pictures while reading a Dutch newspaper. The woman was all surprised when she saw the pictures of her grandfather, Theo L. Lammers, grandmother, Elizabeth Lammers-Berveling, and aunt, Thea Lammers. She immediately contacted Van Oers. Photographer Van Oers sort of had already deducted that the camera was of the man in the picture. He was absolutely right. The camera was indeed of Lammers, Jurgens' grandfather. He was an architect by profession and had to use photography instruments in his work. One point to note here is that the camera in those days was an expensive deal. Despite that, he brought the camera with himself on vacation to capture the moments. It was a big surprise for Jurgens, too, who had not expected that she would find these pictures of her family from a stranger. She explained, "When I saw the pictures in the paper, I felt that it was really special that the pictures were of them." Though she was happy that she got these pictures, she's still wondering how these pictures went out of their house. Jurgens opened up. "I began to wonder how the camera came to the thrift shop, as my aunt was a hoarder and normally refused to get rid of things. When she died in 2003, I emptied her apartment and collected 10 photo albums that belonged to my parents and took them to Canada with me, so I instantly recognized them." On being asked what kind of person her grandfather was, she started speaking very highly of him. She called him an achiever. She further stated, "My grandfather was also meticulous in everything and wrote the date and place in white ink on the photo itself. Himself, my grandma and auntie traveled extensively and documented all of their travels, so I have plenty of pictures of them." Jurgens, just like her grandfather, never missed out on making and saving memories, and this is why she was extremely happy when she learned about the discovery of these pictures. She said, "I love all the pictures and I would like to keep them all together, as that's how they're meant to be. My house is already rather full since my grandfather was also a painter, but I hope I can find a spot to put them on the wall so I can remember this whole event." Jurgens added these newly found photos to her collection of pictures that she had inherited from her grandparents. She had their portraits and also many photographs featuring them. In those pictures, they too were enjoying themselves in a picnic around a highway in 1954. Pictures given by Van Oers was definitely going to make her collection even more beautiful. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspirational stories.